Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Tonight we're going to do It's Clobbering Time. I'm sorry that we're at a different time. Normally we do it at 8:30, but tonight it's 9:30. I recorded. I was on a pre-recorded video on Clownfish's channel, so I don't know when he's going to release that. But we did about an hour and a half with Aaron Sparrow and Clownfish myself. That was a lot of fun. So I hope you don't mind that I rearranged the schedule. And I also did my other talk at 6 o'clock rather than 7. So I had this big chunk to do that. So how's everybody doing? How you doing, Marcus?
I'm about to buy Bitcoin. I was listening to you while I was driving.
Oh, yeah.
After that one. That was great. What a unique guy. What a unique guy he is.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about.
Guillemot, I think.
Yeah, Guillemot. I'm sure I'm butchering his name. But we talked about Bitcoin and comic books, and he's doing a comic book about a Bitcoin-based character. And then I had him explain what Bitcoin really is, and I still don't know what it is. This is like the fourth time a friend tried to explain it to me, and it's Bitcoin. That's all it is. It's all I know.
Yeah, I don't understand it much myself.
Yeah. Okay, people are commenting already. So here's Heroic Tales 2. It's still live on Fund My Comic. What else could I say? It's 2 complete stories, $10. I'm sorry, guys, I'm a little sleepy after I've been talking all night. But it's 2 complete stories. First half of the comic is the patriarch. A child has been abducted, and he goes below Science City to recover. And we find out what lurks below Science City. The second half is the origin of Mary Sue. What happens when the perfect girl gets godlike powers, and how does it ruin her life? You'll see that. And then we got Garfield's Bizarre Adventures, 2 men who play God by G manipulation. Yeah. So tonight we're doing Mr. Sinister.
And linked too.
And High Evolutionary.
Complicated characters.
Yes. Ben Sabar, voice actor. Good evening, John, Marcus, and chat. Oh, I forgot to do this. I forgot to throw the link into the chat. As always, It's Clobbering Time is an open invite for anybody to come in. And Bizarre Adventures, I still don't understand Bitcoin either. Yeah, I know. I'm just resigned to the fact that I'm a dummy.
Well, I'm glad it helps you out, though, John.
Yeah.
I listened to it, and that sounded like that worked out for you regardless.
Yeah. I've been a pretty fortunate person, like stumbling on the right things at the right times a lot, so. But
that's
Bitcoin,
cool.
There was a short burst with Bitcoin, like within a 2-year period, it went from like 5,000 to 45,000, and that's happened to be when I backed it. So don't tell the IRS.
They don't know what Bitcoin is either.
Yeah, well, let's hope Trump abolishes it before they catch up.
The IRS, if he has a chance.
Yeah,
he was kind of busy.
That's why I voted for him. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's doing a lot of what people voted for. Yeah. So,
I don't want to get into Trump. I'll get myself in trouble because today, let's just say today, I'm a little disappointed in Trump.
I'm not disappointed in him.
We're gonna get rid of all the illegals except for the ones who work in this industry. It's like,
well. Yeah, well, but they're really going after the criminals first. The problem is 20 million illegals that takes forever. I mean, that the time, it's going to be past his time, to get them all out. That's very hard to do.
So
I think that's what he's letting people know.
All right, we usually filibuster a bit. We got a couple people watching.
Well, we could talk about Reagan when he did it, but he was backstabbed. See, people always say, well, that was Reagan's big mistake. But the promise was that Tip O'Neill was supposed to cut spending with these big bills, and Tip O'Neill didn't do it, backstabbed Reagan. And Reagan was stuck creating amnesty for these people. So that's something I remember.
Yeah, I got to admit that I don't really remember the Reagan years. Like I was a
little older, and I talked to my dad about it, so he reminds me.
I was a kid, so it's like from what I hear about the Reagan
years, about in college,
I mean, I was a punk rock kid.
I was in high school and college. Yeah,
I remember the music was great.
High school and college. Boy, they hated him. If there was a social media like there is now, it would have been. They did hate him.
So, as normal, we start the show by talking a bit about the characters. Well, so since it's just Marcus and myself, Marcus, who would you like to talk
I
about?
guess I'll do the High Evolutionary. I would
Oh, damn it.
Oh, well, I'll do Mr. Sinister. If you want to do High Evolutionary, I'll do Mr. Sinister.
Please, I know nothing about this.
The problem with both of these characters is that because they're both geneticists and they're both creating different humans, different style humans and mutants and stuff, there's very complicated backstories. I mean, they have a backstory of Mr. Sinister going back to like ancient Egypt or something.
Yeah.
So there's that. And he's created by Chris Claremont and Mark Silvestri. And he has a long he was born in the 19th century, Nathaniel, Essex. And, he's a contemporary of Charles Darwin. And he hired a criminal and his gang known as the Marauders back in the 19th century. So that's what that name comes from. Of course, he is confronted and he meets Ensabanur, Apocalypse. The Marauders wake Apocalypse up, and then he starts going to, and then they had that limited series where Cyclops and Phoenix fight him back in time via time travel to make things more complicated. He did, Apocalypse demands Sinister create a plague that will wipe out much of humanity, leaving only the strong. He refuses. He gets kind of kicked to the curb for a while, and we'll move to the 20th century because Apocalypse comes up again, tries to kill in 1899 to get a technovirus. So this is where you start with Cable and the technovirus and all that. And he works for Ravencroft and with the ancestor of Jack Russell. And so they really tied him into the whole history of Marvel Comics and the mutants. And Rasputin, Gregory Rasputin, which came up about Colossus, which his descendants are Colossus and Magic and Mikhail.
Rasputin. Oh, really? Oh,
that's what they say.
That's how they use it.
I said, boing. We just talked about last week. And then he worked with Dr. Herbert Edgar Wyndham, who becomes the High Evolutionary.
There you go.
I love Exis becomes a high, so, and we're going to fast forward. It all links in with the Juggernaut, the father of the Juggernaut, the father of Xavier. I mean, I don't know how far we want to go back, but basically he's the head of the Marauders and starts names. He creates Madeline Pryor, and then gets Nathan, and they have the son Nathan Summers with Sensitive Future. It becomes Cable and comes back, and he was behind all of this stuff. And Claremont figured that when they said Cyclops was in the adoption agency with Claremont, let's getting back to the creators because it's just so confusing. Getting back to the creators, Claremont figured the head of that adoption agency was a really mystery person, and that gave him the idea of Mr. Sinister way back when he was working with Dave Cockrum, and he didn't get to do it until the Fall of the Mutants, where 1986 he was first mentioned, and by Sabretooth, and then he would and he starting Amusement Massacre and Inferno. And basically, he prefers to be behind the scenes,
right?
All this. Now, modern-wise, I don't know. But there's all sorts of names. The Executioner song, Strife. We don't know who he's really connected with. Like, who's his son? It might be Strife. He works on Living Weapon against Apocalypse. That was Nate Gray, and it's just all this mutant stuff that just gotten. Which is why I don't know if they still. Is he still around? That's a good question. I guess so.
If I remember correctly, didn't Claremont just call him Mr. Sinister while he was?
He just called him Mr. Sinister, kind of out of the blue.
Right, like he was trying to come up with a better name, and he was just like, I
like Mr. Sinister. That's a great name.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think anybody would call him Mr. Sinister these days because everybody wants to make these crazy names. But I think it's one of the last really great names that Claremont came up with. To be honest with you.
I do. I like the name Sinister implies, like if you're sinister, you're sneaky, you're devilish. You're not the Juggernaut out.
Right. He's not out there doing the fighting, even though he's just as powerful as anybody. He's behind the scenes manipulating everything. He's manipulating Apocalypse to a certain extent, even though Apocalypse thinks he's manipulating.
Right.
Um,
He's more of a schemer. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, it's a long, both of these characters have really like, so his powers is genetic engineering at the hands of Apocalypse. So he has precognitive powers, granted power to see the future and major developments, which is why he's able to do what he did. He has the usual, he's super strong. And he makes all these clones and stuff, but basically and he's able to shapeshift from human form so he can escape. But basically, it's really his ability to teleport and see in the future that gives him the ability to manipulate everything from behind the scenes. People think that because of his armor that he wears and his widow's peak, he really is related to Colossus, but I don't think he's really related to Colossus. I think that's just an artist thing. Myself.
Yeah, it was a stylistic thing that later on became like a meta thing. Oh, he kind of looks like Colossus, so they.
When I was reading those books with Mr. Sinister, I don't think we were really supposed to know all that much about him. That's the idea of him. He's not out there; he's behind the scenes.
Yeah, like they retroactively inserted him, like you said, into everything about the X-Men.
Well, that's exactly if like I knew about Mr. Sinister, and I decided to quickly refresh myself. Like we all refresh ourselves with Grok or Wikipedia, and I started looking at this, and they go all the way back to like the beginning of time with these characters, and they've kind of weaved them. They work with Dr. Mengele and with the Nazis. They weaved them all into all sorts of history of Europe and America and the X-Men. And they're trying to do that again, I guess, with Ms. Marvel.
Right.
Which is a little, but they did this kind of behind the scenes.
Like I said, there's a difference between like a retcon and then just like a reveal. Like what they do with Ms. Marvel is a flat out retcon. They're just saying
that's a retcon. This is a reveal. You're right.
You know what I mean? Like they're not really contradicting anything. That like, it's not like they had a story with Mengele doing this and then they changed it to insert. You know what I mean? Like it kind of they made him a sneaky behind the scenes manipulator, and that kind of works to retroactively say he's always been around because he's not the one that was killed Thunderbird. That was
right. The X-Men characters are funny that way because they have two characters that do that. They have Apocalypse,
right,
and they have Mr. Sinister. You would think you would only have one of these things. Like Thor has one Odin from the beginning of time. Right? He doesn't have three Odins. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
There isn't like Odin Jr. the fight that was
Mr. Sinister and Dr. Apocalypse kind of have the same overlapping.
Right. Exactly. Well, they work together. He was supposed to be Mr. Sinister's Apocalypse's right hand man until he tried to usurp his power.
That kind of makes sense that he could have been the apprentice that reached too high.
Look at that Imagy costume with the weird cape and stuff.
Yeah, it's totally.
That you can't draw twice in a row.
Right. That is so Image. The red diamond. What does that have to do with anything? It's cool.
I was going to say we were doing some character, and I forgot which was Reaper Destroyer, and then we did something else. One of the other characters like that, and I go, "Well, what's his costume?" And James Lee knows a little more than us. And he goes, well, it's kind of how you make it. And I said, well, then in that case, because I don't know what to do with these costumes. And it was not like a Kirby thing where Kirby forgets the costume and he adds like a shoulder thing and then you go back. It's like these costumes change from page to page. So it's very difficult to figure out what anybody looks like.
Yeah.
It's such a... And Mr. Sinister, I felt that way about him, Mr. Sinister, when they were drawing him. That was back in the Mark Silvestri days at X-Men when he was telling a story. Hail, Batmerk. Batmerk's a very good cartoonist.
It's but also the Shadow King and Mephisto, who are also
Mephisto to me, yes, the Shadow King. You're right. Mephisto to me is more of an overall Marvel villain. He's supposed to be the devil.
Right. He's
but Marvel. They don't want to call him the devil. Marvel was not really denominational at that time. We're talking about a lot of religion. So they instead of saying Mephistopheles or Satan, they called him Mephisto, and then since then they made a Satan, they made another, and now they have levels of devil characters. Which
it always bothered me that they had Satanish, but they never said like.
Well, I don't think. Well, that's a Comics Code thing. You don't know if that. There's so much stuff that we found out later, like Jack Kirby drew this really scary red skull, and what was printed isn't as scary. Comics Code.
Right.
But we don't even know that until like 30 years later.
Like, I remember being confused as a kid. Like, they didn't say zombies, but they said zoombies.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to use the name zombie. That's right.
Right. And then they
Zuvembi.
Zuvembi or something. And then they couldn't say mafia, so they said magia.
Well, I wouldn't have said mafia either, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I would have made up a name for that.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then what I did like is they sooner or later, like, they differentiated when they were allowed to say mafia. The mafia was the regular mafia that it fought the Punisher,
right?
And then the magia kind of became like the high tech mafia, with like silver.
Well, they fought Iron Man in the 60s in Tales of Suspense.
In the Spider-Man Unlimited, Peter Parker gets transported to an alternate world ruled by the High Evolutionary and his beast folk in tall buildings. Humans were second-class citizens. Yeah, that's what the High.
I saw a couple of those cartoons.
Hey, Universe, how you doing? Yeah.
Hey, Universe.
Who is his main bad guy? Is obviously the X-Men, and then his big story was Mutant Massacre, right?
Mutant Massacre, right, and then Inferno, because he created Madeline Pryor, who was the Inferno, the beginner of Inferno.
Right, the Goblin Queen. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had to do something with Matt. They had to do something with Madeline.
Right.
Madeline Pryor, right?
And I that's like one of my comic book things is Madeline Pryor was originally just a girl who looked like Jean Grey. If you ask
me. They brought back Jean Grey.
And then they did the worst thing. They made Cyclops a deadbeat dad.
They brought back Jean Grey, and it did make sense. Like, I was there, like, we're watching this comic. Nobody, like, the comic news, which you read, the Comic Buyer's Guide, not like this. Nobody really thought X Factor was a really good idea. It wasn't a bad comic. It even was a pretty good comic when it started. But it wasn't a good idea. But they were so desperate to get the original team back together. And what are they going to do with Cyclops? I think they took him away from Claremont. I don't know if that's Claremont's idea or not. I like that Lee Forrester one. Remember that one? Yeah. 151 or something? Like, he was in Alaska with her.
Yeah, that was they were stranded on the Cthulhu Island together.
Yeah, I like that. That's crazy.
She was my favorite. I always liked those, like, second string girlfriends. Like,
yeah, you never know with Claremont whether the second string girlfriend was going to be the first string girlfriend.
But I do believe that they were going to retire Cyclops, marry. Jean Grey's gone.
I don't know if they're ever really going to retire Cyclops, but
who really retires? But I think they had, like, at one point they were going to kill Reed Richards and keep him dead, and then they changed their mind. But I think
usually what happens is, I don't know why you would kill Reed Richards. That's just stupid. But but like, usually what happens if that happens, they kill his wife and he's in tears and he comes back. Oh, I have to come back to the X-Men. I don't know what else to go. But they didn't do that. They made him leave her with a baby.
And I think that's why they made her the Goblin Queen, because to kind of absolve Cyclops,
Yeah, that she was really going to be evil anyway, but it hasn't worked because nobody likes Cyclops anyway.
Yeah. Well,
I always liked him, but most people don't like Cyclops.
Yeah, and he technically wasn't a Guardians movie. He was evil. I don't know how accurate it was. All right, so we'll bring up the High Evolutionary now. So the High Evolutionary is a Jack Kirby creation, so I'm automatically biased towards him.
Me too.
Yeah. I forget now. He first showed up in Thor. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
He showed up in Thor. So he was originally a Thor villain.
A lot of things happened in Thor.
Yeah, Thor was,
Origin of Galactus, him.
Yeah.
Adam Warlock, that became Adam Warlock. A lot of things happened in Thor, and of all the Lee Kirby ones, that's kind of the least regarded in a weird way.
Yeah, and it's so good.
And I've reread it a bunch of times in the Masterwork, in the phone book, the black and white phone books they put out. It is really good.
Yeah, I like Zach Head says, I like Cyclops when he's not actively being ruined. Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. The Marvel stuff brought mostly the Ultimate X-Men, Thor had more of a rogues gallery than we thought. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the thing about Thor was like, if you read Thor and you think he's upstanding, really nice guy, people think, oh, Stanley, everything's so silly and he makes jokes. Like Thor was kind of mean. He beat the crap out of his villains. He was like, I am Thor, F you, I'm a god of thunder, I'm a god. And he just beat the living crap out of most of the time.
And they had to depower him too, if you remember. They
a couple of times they did.
Yeah, they took away a lot of his like cosmic powers. John, you got a scoop? Simon's, yeah, that's a good comic. Simonson's Ragnarok. Yeah, I should talk about. You're absolutely right. It's like the unofficial continuation of Walt Simonson's run on Thor.
I never read. I know I've read a couple of them. I have to really read that.
Yeah, so
it's hard. They don't even reprint the trade, so it's hard to get them.
Yeah, Logic left before I did. They forgot the characters. Yep. I stayed till 2015. So who's smarter? Who started? Logic's probably smarter. So the High Evolutionary is born in 1890s England. He was Edgar Wingard, and it says here that he was inspired by other scientists like Nathan Essex. So they, even though he came out first, they retroactive. And again, that doesn't bother me because they're filling in details rather than changing details. I like that. And what did he do? He was like, do you use the word disciple, follower, inspired by Darwin? He got fascinated by evolution, and I think Stanley and everybody they were influenced by the Island of Dr. Moreau. And what he did was he would use these, I don't know, rays, what magic science? I'd just say magic science, and he evolved animals, and he made them into human forms, and then he realized that they were just going to be barbarian brutes, so he trained them in like honor, so they became the Knights of Wundagore. And now I got to explain what Wundagore is. Wundagore is a mountain in mystical Marvel comic version of Europe someplace. It's like near Bavaria or whatever, and it's a mountain that is one of the 3 known places where there's vibranium. So there's Wundagore vibranium, which is like the most mystical of the vibraniums. There's Wakanda vibranium, and then there's Savage Land vibranium, and they each have slightly different properties. But I think they got rid of that over time. I think the Marvel editors kind of forgot. Right, the Savage Land vibranium destroyed metal. The Wundagore vibranium was like a power source. It was radioactive, and then the Wakanda one was the super science one. But whatever,
the Savage Land vibranium was really important for a long time, though. I don't think
they had a shield presence there that was like mining it, and Kazar was like always kicking them out.
That was that back into the. That was that time they must have loved that story where Tarzan went to the center of the earth, right?
John, it wasn't magic science; it was genetics. Yeah. So, yeah, the Marlon Brando version of Dr. Moreau was really bizarre, guys. Go watch that one for craziness. I'm just trying to see. I'm trying to see all the comments. The Kirby design wins, of course. You know me. I'm going to side with everything Kirby. So to make a long story short, he started to experiment on himself. Now, one of the things about the High Evolutionary is like, what powers does he have? Well, intrinsically, he's just a smart scientist. But then he started to evolve himself, and then he had this armor that like it had the gears and mechanisms in it, so that when he needed to be more smart, he could evolve his brain. When he needed to be more physically stronger, he could evolve his body and things like that. And at one point, he was as tall as Galactus and fought Galactus. So he evolved himself like so far beyond that he turned into pure energy. He's one of these characters that, like, to me, like the thing about the Joker is every time you see the Joker, you get to reinvent the Joker. The same thing about the High Evolutionary. You keep a few things about the Joker, you keep a few things about the High Evolutionary, and to me, the inconsistencies don't matter because you always say he evolved in a different way. He's always tweaking with his genetic code. And that's what he did. He made the Knights of Wundagore. Somebody mentioned that Chthon, yes, right here. Chthon was this like primordial demonic alien deity monster that was imprisoned below Wundagore, and that probably tampered with the vibranium. Maybe it landed on the Earth when the vibranium meteorite broke apart and landed there. And Wundagore plays a significant part in Marvel for a couple of reasons. One of them being the High Evolutionary, a second one being that's the only source where the puppet master has that radioactive clay where he could form the puppets that he could use to mind control everybody, and then the third is it's his home base and this wonderfully convoluted, nerdy, detailed story of Vision and Scarlet Witch were tied there. Magda, the wife
There's
of
the cow, right?
She went there because they were pregnant with these mutant twins, and Magnus, back as he was known back then, Magnus brought her there to the Evolutionary to treat her, and then she died in birth. Magnus was brokenhearted and left, and then the Bova, the cow woman that was
that's the cow woman, Bova.
She gave the babies to Peter and something Maximoff.
Madeline, the Wizard and Miss America.
No, not yeah, that's right.
Robert Frank was the Wizard.
Yeah, because the Wizard and Madeline Joyce also went there because of their two superpowers. They were like radiated superpowers. Madeline Joyce was dying. Of course, she dies in childbirth. She gave birth to Nuclo, who is a menace from the day he was born. They hide Nuclo and then tell Bob Frank, the Wizard, these are your kids. Bova gives him these kids. He runs off because his wife died. Don't give birth on Wonder War Mountain. You're gonna die, ladies. Don't go there.
Yeah, right.
So then he gives the babies to the Gypsy family. Django was his name, Django Maximo, and that's where Peter and that's where Pedro and Wanda get that. They live as gypsies until they find out their true heritage. So there you go, wonderful convoluted story. At one point, the High Evolutionary left. His whole base flew away into space as a rocket ship. And he used the asteroid belt and magic science to form Counter Earth.
Counter Earth, yep.
And Counter Earth existed on the other side of the sun, so we could never detect it. And then he, released the spores and sped up evolution, and made a whole bunch. Like, it was supposed to be a paradise, untainted. But of course, what was his name? Man Wolf or Man Brute?
Man Brute, yeah.
He became like the Satan figure on Counter Earth, and then Warlock landed there. He got some of this evolutionary stuff, so he was already like godlike, and now he unlocked all his potential, and he became like the Jesus of Counter Earth. I forget, did Counter Earth get destroyed?
I think it didn't the Impossible Man eat Counter Earth?
I forget it. I forget. I gotta look up Counter Earth, but
I think maybe he ate Counter Earth in that. And that when the Fantastic Four were coming back, we found out about Counter Earth when the Hulk and Adam Warlock went there, or Adam Warlock was like the god of Counter Earth somehow,
right? Yeah,
and they would kind of use it to bring Adam Warlock back, and the Hulk went over there.
Yeah, and I remember that was Gene Colan doing the art. I forget who wrote that, but then they quickly abandoned that, gave him to Jim Starlin, and that became the legendary.
Right.
Yeah, that was when he had just the lightning bolt to the pointy shoulders and like the underwear.
Oh, yeah. I think, you know what? Jim Starlin said that, why'd you get rid of the lightning bolt? He goes, because it was a pain in the ass to draw.
So what powers does the High Evolutionary have? Obviously, he's super intelligent. He wears armor that's comparable to Iron Man's armor. He can evolve life forms, so he can, whatever magic science rays, he could turn a pig into a pig man. He could turn a man into, Neanderthal and down lower on the evolutionary scale. And he could evolve his brain to the point where he has like these advanced psionic cosmic abilities and become one with the universe and everything. So he ranges from just smart human to cosmic powered being and at all points in between. So who is his bad guys? Well, obviously the Fantastic Four, obviously Thor, obviously the Avengers, and then the Inhumans, because they tied together all the Inhumans and the High Evolutionary and the Eternals, all that stuff. They put it together. I just love. I could go on and on and on about the Kree and how the Kree tampered with everything, and he's followed along in Kree footsteps, realizing that humanity is malleable, and I just love all this nonsense. So is really the backstory. Anything that I'm missing? Anything that I
Well,
forgot?
people are asking, is he a high evolutionary evil? He's been evil. He
Is
was evil in Thor.
um
He created that wolf that Thor fought for like 2 issues.
yeah, but
Thor fought a lot of things at 2 issues because his first story was only 15 pages. But
I mean, yeah, he's Dr. He's Dr. Moreau on roids. Yeah.
yeah, that's right.
At one point, he tried to end his life, but his armor wouldn't let him. There you go. I don't remember that story, but I'm
At
sure.
one point, he ascended to God. In the 70s, a lot of these characters would, as my dad would say, go cosmic. And at the end of the thing, they don't know what to do. And so they all became cosmic. Doctor Strange was good for that. That comic. Everybody went cosmic in the first 12 issues.
Yeah, what was he evil? I mean, short answer, yes. Long answer is it's complicated. I mean,
he wasn't evil when he had a new Earth because he was running that Earth,
But he said he saw himself as God. He did experiments, painful experiments on beasts, and at points he was. I think he was like capturing Inhumans and studying them to see what made them inhuman. So I'm not going to say he was a good guy, but I'm not going to say he was like the stereotypical. It's science, so the ends justify the means kind of thing. And then he had stories where he was like maybe evolved to the point of his insanity and acting evil. The movie version, he was just a son of a bitch. I mean, my wife hated him because what he did to those poor animals. Like, say what you want about Americans, but don't hurt our animals. You know what I mean?
That's it. Yeah, no, the Impossible Count Earth. It says here, that reminds me, yeah, the High Evolution faced Galactus off in the Fantastic Four. That one is, I think that issue was inked by John Buscema and lost. And Gore, that yellow gorilla
Yeah.
they had, and they tried to prevent Galactus from devouring Count Earth. But the Apostle Man tricked the Galactus into eating Pop-Up, which is just air, because the Apostle Man was his own world in his. The Apostle Man is a crazy character. We got to do him one time.
Yeah, and then that gave Galactus indigestion, and
that's what they said. High Evolution saved Galactus.
Right.
So that's what happened. That's kind of, and then they, Count was aggressively targeted for collection by the Beyonders, and then once the Beyonder gets involved, that's the end of the story. It's impossible to follow. the Beyonder, geez, Louise.
Saying so is grossly simple. That's why I said short answer. Yeah. He was detached from you. Man, that's a good way to put it. So he made science. You're right. He is the embodiment of science for the sake of science. Science removed from ethics. Is that logic? Is that a good way to describe it? He wants to know. Damn the cure. Damn the consequences. And Reed Richards, I'd like to think, is the ethical scientist. So of course. That put them at odds. Is that I always get nervous with Logic's finest because he's good at.
He could come on.
Yeah, everybody could come on.
He remembers some of this stuff better than I do, and I have a good memory, but there's so much to it.
It's funny. Brian Bow was just saying the other day, like, how does Marcus remember all this stuff?
Some stuff I remember, and then I double check at comics.org to make sure I'm right. Some of the stuff I just remember straight.
Evil. Okay. I'm not going to argue that point either. And of course, if anybody wants to pop in, anybody's welcome.
I was glad that Brian said that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do basically remember stuff.
Yeah. I can remember comics from 25 years ago, but I can't remember things from 6 months ago.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Oh, thank you. Okay, pressure's off. Pressure's off. Yeah. First and foremost, I love the High Evolutionary. Marcus, we talked a few times at how we said, like, there's characters that, like, they're your characters. The High Evolutionary is
right.
one of the characters that
it's one of your characters. I feel that way about most like 70s Marvel characters. Like when you listen to Ask Chuck Dixon, and Chuck goes, and this does bother me. And you might just all the comics in the 70s are horrible.
Right.
Jesus, I grew up. I really did grow up. Like I was 10 years old in 1975. I read all those comics. Now, I know what he means. They're way overwritten. Don McGregor's comics, they're so purple prose, Englehart, Ween. But those are the basis. So many post-Stan Lee Roy Thomas. I know that he doesn't, and he's much more to the point, sharp. But they weren't bad comics. I mean, that Starlin.
That's an oversimplification, you know.
No, I know that's for the thing, but it does kind of like get in the back of my head.
Right.
But that's how I feel about a lot of these characters. Like Jessica Jones isn't one of my characters, but Power Man is, you know.
You know, he says that, you know, that's written as bad as the 70s comics, except the war and the Western comics. All comics in the 70s stuff.
Yeah, which nobody read. Now, here's the ironic thing about the war comics is that I did pick up some war comics. Everybody picks up some comics, right? They in the back had to say, make peace, not war, because they were so negative by them because of the Vietnam. I'm surprised they lasted to the 80s because they were dying because of the Vietnam War. The negative, the wars, now you think it's bad now. It was way worse back then.
I remember. Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of ironic. I know it was because of Joe Kubert and all, Russ Heath and all those guys. And he really does want to write a war comic.
He could be an anti-hero. He teams with heroes, but he always has the evolving Earth 6 as his primary job. Yeah, he's the High Evolutionary is like the epitome of like the world is my plaything. You know, damn the consequences.
I like the High Evolutionary better than Mr. Sinister.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that Mr. Sinister and Apocalypse are kind of like the High Evolutionary for the X-Men because we can't really use him for the X-Men.
Although, yeah, he would be perfect. He fought. He fought Alpha.
Did he ever fight the X-Men? I don't think so.
The High Evolutionary? Hey, Logic, your microphone's off.
Oh, thanks, Logic. I didn't mean to shame you to come in. You don't have to come in if you don't want.
Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to be on with both of you absolute legends.
Wow.
I don't know about it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Mr. Sinister is unnerving. I just like the name a lot, Mr. Sinister. It's just I'm surprised that Chris Claremont came up with it's such a un-Claremont name, Mr. Sinister. You know, that's like a DC villain name. You know, Mr. Sinister. He guy with a wand that like he points the wand at Batman and his mask goes backwards. You know what I mean? That's the kind of name that Mr. Sinister evokes. So, but I do like Mr. Sinister. I do like these villains that mess with evolution and twisting genetic codes. I just think that's a lot of fun. And speaking of twisting a genetic code, Tony Grigo has a twisted genetic code. Oh, gonna bust somebody's chops and oh, there you go, Tony. How you doing?
Hey, John.
Yeah, welcome,
Hey, Marcus.
Hey, Tony.
Anything you want to say? Save me from talking for a couple of minutes.
I was going to say, I would say that the High Evolutionary wins because
you're already going right to the fight. You're already going to the fight.
While Essex built, like he built his stuff on Essex discoveries, I think he's over in terms of his intelligence. He improved on all the stuff that Nathaniel Essex created. And I mean, look at his armor. His armor protects him, prevents him from killing himself, allows him to grow, allows him to constantly evolve. Yeah, I think that he would win. To be fair, yeah.
I could jump right to the fight now. I think Mr. Sinister has no chance.
Exactly.
I mean, the High Evolutionary is cosmic level. Like somebody says, he's beyond Omega. Now, Mr. Sinister's no pushover, but and I'm sure somebody could pull out an instance in the comics where he twisted his own DNA and made himself more powerful. But I mean, I can't see Mr. Sinister fighting Galactus.
Can't.
Yeah, and not only fighting Galactus, but Mr. High Evolutionary won. You know what I mean?
And the High Evolutionary I always liked because he was more neutral, whereas Sinister was sort of like Joseph Mengele, you know, with his experimentation with humans and mutants and stuff. He was just a sadist, a cool villain, but ultimately the Evolutionary outclasses him on all levels.
Yeah. So what would be the setup? I mean, I guess we're jumping ahead, and it's good because I do have to go to. I have to wake up at 3:30 because I got to go to work.
Oh, you have to work early tomorrow?
Yeah, Saturdays I got to wake up earlier for an earlier train because it's a Saturday schedule. So, what would be the setup for the fight? Roger, you've been quiet. Are we talking too much? Anything you want to say?
No, no, no. I agree with everything that has been said. I mean, you know, these guys are two completely different beings. You know, Mr. Sinister was always a master manipulator, right?
Right.
He had companies in every aspect on Earth. He was always behind the scenes. He fancied himself as a evil wizard behind the curtain, right? That was Sinister's thing. He was evil. He was sadistic. He wanted power, and he had power, and he wanted to rule things, but he was evil. He was hurtful, and he was behind the scenes. He saw himself as the grand puppeteer, for lack of a better term. Whereas the high evolutionary, he wasn't evil, and he didn't see himself as evil. Like, he was so detached. He was such a neutral scientist that he actually looked at life itself as something to be studied, indexed, collated, manipulated, and worked on and tested on. So he had zero humanity, zero morals. So yeah, like, he could do things that could seem evil and hurtful, but he never did it from a place of he's trying to hurt people or trying to hurt life. His whole thing was the pursuit of science for the sake of the pursuit itself.
Right.
So,
and also I think that the high evolutionary evolved his brain to the point where detached is a good way to describe it. Like, he almost became like Dr. Manhattan in the fact that, like, you would just like walk, observe things, like almost like you would see Tony Grigo there, but he wouldn't see Tony Grigo as a person. He would see him as a genetic code.
Yeah, my atoms and all that.
Yeah.
Like, just be like, look at this guy's genetic code as opposed to that, but completely forget that this is an individual human with a personality. You know what I mean? It was just chemicals and mitochondria. It all together. So yeah,
Oh, and John,
the man beast. That is a brilliant point.
The man beast.
The man beast destroyed Counter Earth. To answer, right.
Yeah, we said man, but it was man. Yeah. So I would see, like, Mr. Sinister is doing these experiments. I'm trying to come up with a setup of why they would fight. So Mr. Sinister's doing his manipulations, doing all this stuff, trying to come up with whatever it is his goal is, and then the high evolutionary is just like, I can't do this. Is tainted. I need a control, and I could see him like either fixing everything back so that he could do his experiments, and then finally it's just like, you need to stop this because I'm trying to work over here, and you're contaminating my pool. Like, you're splashing your acid into my bases, kind of thing. And I could just see, like, their pursuits would clash. They're too similar. They would be fighting over the same resources, or maybe they would be like the perfect mutant that they both want to study. It's like, no, I'm good. And they would just get into a confrontation. And whereas I see, like you said, Mr. Sinister he's more of like a background character, a manipulator. Whereas the high evolutionary is just in your face. He's more aggressive. I'm going to do this, and I got the power to back it up. I don't see how, like, unless Mr. Sinister had, like, I hate saying prep time, but like Mr. Sinister is more than Batman. Like, I just don't. I can even see Mr. Sinister preparing, but how do you prepare against a being whose whole thing is that he changes every time you see him? He is the ultimate X-Man, even though he's not a mutant, he's variable. He changes. So, okay.
His armor is his soul strength. That can allow him to change and grow, and protects him completely. Whereas Sinister, the only way to kill him is the optic blast from Cyclops, right? That's his one. that's how you kill Sinister, right? It's
Really?
been a while since I've read
Is that
X-Men.
really his weakness? His weakness is Cyclops' beams, or is this
Yeah,
just Cyclops' beams are so powerful that they can?
I don't know. It's been a while. I haven't read X-Men in like 15 years, man.
But, yeah. So I mean, what do you guys think? I'm calling this like early, quick, just for
I
two
mean,
reasons.
yeah, there's not much. I think that High Evolutionary has been and will be on get to be a god level.
Right.
He's running a whole Earth. He created a whole Earth. Mr. Sinister can't beat the X-Men.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the X-Men always somehow, even though he could see in the future and he created Madeline Pryor and all that stuff. I mean, the High Evolutionary, like in that issue of the Fantastic Four, was going one-on-one with Galactus. You know, that he got big, that, you know, just like the Sphinx did that time.
Yep.
So this is an immensely powerful character.
I think that's my
Although they're
first.
similar because they're geneticists, I think it's a High Evolutionary.
I think that's the first comic I ever bought with the High Evolutionary when he
Is
was.
that right?
He's on the cover fighting Galactus. Yeah. So me and Marcus both say High Evolutionary. Logic, what do you think? Who's going to win this fight?
I would have to agree. 10 out of 10 times I give it to the High Evolutionary. Mr. Sinister is content to pull strings, be evil, hurt people, kill people, manipulate things. Whereas the High Evolutionary, you know, his thing is he's the ultimate scientist. All right, he's running literally an entire planet for the sake of genetics and science. And we see all of the other the cosmic powers, the planetary level powers, all of the things. His entire frame of mind is so much larger and so much broader than anything Mr. Sinister has interest in or can even conceptualize. So 10 out of 10 times, I have to give it to the High Evolutionary.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, what do you think?
High Evolutionary all the way. You know, even though Nathaniel Essex, if I'm remembering correctly, his body was modified by Apocalypse, and that's why he's even though he's received some upgrades, it's nothing compared to the High Evolutionary. He's nothing compared to him.
Yeah, I like I said, neither one of them are pushovers. I think if the Fantastic Four was to fight Mr. Sinister, it would be a cool fight. You know, just like the Fantastic Four fighting the High Evolutionary, to me was like one of the high points in the Fantastic Four comics. But you know, the High Evolutionary, I just don't see Mr. Sinister beating him. They're just on different scales. It's like Blue Beetle fighting Silver Surfer.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a better matchup would be like the High Evolutionary and Galactus, High Evolutionary and Darkseid or something.
Yeah, High Evolutionary. Yeah, he is one of the alpha predators of you know, that's probably not the best term.
These characters, they get so powerful. The current group do not know what to do with them. That's why you don't see them much.
Yeah,
they're not creative enough to figure out what to do. You know,
John,
and those awful 70 comics creating they're terrible. Chuck Dixon said they're awful, but creating Counter Earth was pretty cool. You know.
Now I forget. Okay, Logic.
Really quick, the High Evolutionary. If he was to ever get into a fight with the Fantastic Four, I can see Reed Richards making an intellectual argument, and the High Evolutionary would stop the fight and say, "You know what, Reed? That makes sense. I will now pursue this logical course of
kind of happened that way."
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to reread the comic, but the High Evolutionary ended up saving Counter Earth from Galactus, and they tricked Galactus so that he ate Impossible Man's world, which is just a bunch of gas, and gave him cosmic indigestion.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, so they kind of did happen. That I mean, and then they said, "Oh, how could they do that to Galactus?" Well, it's Impossible Man. I mean, you know, so
yeah, I do agree that once a character gets too powerful, they get boring or hard to write.
But they're hard to write.
But to me, the High Evolutionary should be overpowered. Like he's not the guy Spider-Man fights. He's the guy that the Avengers Annual #6. You know what I mean? Like it's like, as Chuck Dixon says, an oh shit character.
Yeah, a real oh shit character as opposed to Bane.
And that's why Doctor Doom is like my favorite bad guy of all time.
Bane.
But now he's just too. He's got the Joker problem that he shows up every third issue.
Well, they use him an awful lot, you know.
And like
sometimes I wonder, is that just dictated by corporate? Like, use Doctor Doom, use Doctor Doom. We got lots of toys. He's going to be in a movie. Use Doctor Doom.
Yeah, it's the movies coming out, so they gotta do Doctor Doom every third comic.
But like, you don't like Bane, Tony?
No, I hated it. I hated that character when I was a kid. I just hated it.
Really?
Because he was stupid, you know. He was. No offense to Chuck Dixon, the man wrote a lot of books that I love. Airboy, Alien Legion. I love Chuck Dixon. I celebrate the man's work, but I hated Nightfall. I hated Bane. I thought that he was a crappy villain. I mean, he looked like he was in a luchador outfit, you know. And it was basically just Doc Savage, Latin American Doc Savage in a luchador outfit.
That's exactly what Chuck said. And that's exactly what Graham Nolan says. I made him look like a luchador. Like, that is the basis of Bane.
But if anyone was gonna screw up Batman, it should have been somebody that earned it, not just some Johnny come lately. You know, it should have been Two-Face.
Well,
it should have been Joker, Ra's al Ghul.
That is one of my.
I have the same problem with Doomsday. I have the same problem with him.
Because
if anyone was gonna screw up Superman, Brainiac, Bizarro, Luthor, you know, not some Hulk ripoff with a bunch of bony claws. You know, I hated that.
And not only that, Superman forgot how to use his powers when he fought Doomsday. You know, like they just stood on the ground and
I have to reread it and find out why he didn't use some of his other powers. Maybe there was something that I don't know. This thing was Kryptonian eventually.
Kryptonian stupid field or something.
Ask Dan Jurgens. Come down to Heroes Con. You can ask Dan Jurgens.
Yeah, and you know, and it's stupid, you know, because I remember when that happened with Nightfall. I remember. Why did they break his back? Like it seemed to coincide with Christopher Reeve's neck injury. So it always kind of pissed me off. You know, Superman can't walk, but Batman recovers.
They broke his back because they killed Superman.
Yeah, I hated that. That was unnecessary.
What are we going to do? And they didn't even. He didn't even fight. He didn't even fight him at top speed. It was Batman up like for a whole week trying to put everybody back.
Exactly. He cheated. That's the other thing I didn't like. Yeah. He's cheated. You know. That's why whenever Chuck, you know, God bless him, I love Bane. He's my baby. He's my oh shit villain. I'm like, come on. I
didn't think of Bane like that, but you have a point. I mean,
the only time that character has ever been good is in the Nolan films. You know, I mean, I just love the way. I like him. You know, I mean, instead of that stupid, you know, the venom making him bigger, he's got that gas in his mask that makes him not feel pain, so he could outfight. You know, he gets shot, he doesn't feel the bullet. You know, that to me made a lot more sense than just super steroids. You know, and then he looked cooler than he did in the comics, and
it's really interesting.
Coron Brown has a pretty interesting thing. Who had the better? Who created the better children, Mr. Sinister, you know, Cable and Nate, or Mr. Sinister, High Evolutionary, Wanda and Quicksilver? Well, I hate Cable, so my explanation, Wanda and Quicksilver.
I was going to say Wanda's really hot, so she wins.
Nate, I like isn't Nate and Cable like the same person, just at different points of time? Yeah,
that's is a better name than Cable.
Yeah.
Well, that's his name. Yeah, he was X-Man, but I just,
that's still a better name than Cable.
Yeah, just you know. anything's a better name than it's
Can
just
can I,
what's that?
Tony, I'll say this. I forget the actor. It might have been it was Michael Caine, and then it was also the TV guy, Sorkin, Aaron Sorkin. He said that listen, here is the thing about when you adapt a novel or comics for the screen. Certain things work better on the page than they do on the screen, and then
Yeah, I agree.
there are certain things that work better on the screen than they do on the page. So
Mhm.
I understand what you're saying, Tony, about Bane. Um, Personally, I liked Nightfall. I liked Night's End. I liked everything about it. I agree with you though. I did not like the whole thing that Bane cheated. Like, why would you want to physically wear Batman down and mentally down when he's at his lowest instead of at his peak to then test yourself? So I agree with you on that. However, I know that Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan hate the Nolan films.
I
I
know.
like Nolan. I like the films a lot. I liked Bane in the film. Now, it's not the Bane that they created. Granted, I'll give them that. But as a film, as its own piece of work, I personally think it was a brilliant piece of work. But again, everything that there are certain things they don't translate well from page to screen. So I think overall, Nolan made good choices. But that one point though, I do agree with you. Bane cheated, and I didn't like that in the
I,
comics.
I I think the reason he cheated was he knew deep down inside he couldn't win. So he
Bingo.
was looking for
The only reason
to
why
get
you
one
cheat,
over.
if you know you could win, you don't cheat.
Exactly. So yeah, he's
There
not a
you
no
go.
shit villain. With all due respect to Chuck, but that is not a no shit villain. Ra's al Ghul is a no shit villain.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Totally, totally.
Yeah, and I can
Koran,
see like
he super chatted. Thank you, Koran. You didn't have to
how
super
does
chat.
Chuck
We already
feel
answered.
about Ra's al Ghul?
Cable and X-Men versus Wanda and Quicksilver. Who created helped the better child? I still say Wanda and Quicksilver light years better than Cable and X-Men. Cable
Yeah.
is I feel free to disagree with me, but Cable makes no sense. Cable is the character that a
Cable
7-year-old
makes no sense. None of those characters make any sense.
and X-Men is just a
Nothing nice about
derivative.
them.
It's X-Men to me is no different than Spider-Gwen. You know what I mean? It's just another derivative character.
Cable from Age of Apocalypse, right? That's what he
Yeah,
was.
he was. That's
Yeah,
right. Although I like Age of
those in
Apocalypse.
years. Yeah, yeah.
I
What
did
did
like Age of
you think Josh
Apocalypse.
Brolin as Cable? I think Josh Brolin is good in everything he does.
Yeah.
Josh Brolin almost got me to like Cable.
Well, you can like Josh Brolin's Cable, hate the other Cables. We'll allow you that.
Like he was a good Jonah Hex in a bad Jonah Hex movie.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. I forgot about that flick. Yeah.
Everybody likes Nightfall, but I never liked Bane either.
A lot of people like Nightfall.
I think Louis Simonson was trying to portray Superman meeting his physical match and getting pounded, bruised, and bled.
Simonson didn't. Louise didn't do the final issue. That was Dan Jurgens. They only had a bit and parts of the issues. Well, they all decided on how to line. They all had meetings. They had big meetings in hotels in New York to decide these storylines, these giant storylines. They don't just come up with them. So they're more editorial driven than you think.
Mm.
And then reading how does Chuck feel about Ra's al Ghul? I don't remember him using him.
That was Danny O'Neill's
right. He was created
homage of Fu Manchu. That's his homage.
Yeah.
In Chuck's mind, he was created in the 70s, so he must be awful.
All right. So while we're talking about this,
he said that it drove me nuts.
And I know I'm going to rush off because I got to go to bed. But what do you think about next week? What you know what I was thinking of? I put on Twitter, what's the greatest weapon of all fiction?
I saw that quickly today.
Do you think we think that would be a good it's clobbering time, just like like
Yeah, just talk about the different weapons in fiction.
Stormbringer.
Why?
that was my
Could be Stormbringer,
Stormbringer for me. That's what I.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that next week. The greatest fictional weapon of for whatever fantasy comic book, whatever you want to bring up.
Right.
Josh's best role was in the Goonies. Yeah, he was in the Goonies. Ultimate Nullif. Oh, we're already answered. We can't answer.
Well, we got to come up with a list. We can't just have two. So you're gonna have Thor's hammer, Stormbringer. The power glove, the stones.
Yeah.
The Infinity glove.
That's what was gems. And then what else was? Oh, one last question before we go. What did you like the High Evolutionary in the movie as opposed to the High Evolutionary in the comic?
I hated him.
I
hated him in that movie. God, he was such a. He was a sadist. He was mean.
Okay. You were supposed to hate him. Yeah.
Yeah, they turned him into the. Yeah.
I haven't seen a Marvel movie since Endgame, so I don't know.
You'll cry when he sees what he does to that raccoon, man. That was horrible.
I mean, I like Guardians of the Galaxy, but I didn't see 3. I just didn't see them. I don't really have a big thing. Well, I hate them, so I didn't go see them. I just didn't go see them. It's kind of different.
Like I said, I love the High Evolutionary, and I thought they did a good job with, because that he's not going to be around for 16 movies, so they did a one-shot movie that's kind of weird.
But that was not the High Evolutionary, though, John.
But man, was he an evil son of a bitch that you just love to hate.
Yeah, he's a bastard. I didn't like that guy. Yeah.
That was not the High Evolutionary. That was the High Evolutionary in name only. First off,
exactly.
Yes, I know he's like purple or fuchsia or whatever color is. He's not a black guy. Period. Full stop. He's not a black guy. Period. Full stop. I don't care. I don't care that his skin is some crazy color. He's not a black guy. Secondly, the character that they put in that film, that character was Mr. Sinister. That was not the High Evolutionary. He's not an evil sadist who hurts his creations and hurts the people that he genetically alters and genetically manipulates and genetically creates. So that was not the High Evolutionary at all. Secondly, just me personally, this is only my personal choice. Anything simplistic hurts my head, and James Gunn's. Once you've seen one James Gunn film, you've seen every film he's ever made.
Exactly.
It is silly, over the top nonsense. It is stupid slapstick humor, and then there is a powerful emotional subplot to somehow make you forget that you're actually watching the same dumb, weird, quirky film over and over and over again. And I'm just gonna say this really quick. We've already seen this new Superman movie because it's a James Gunn film. It's the same film over and over again. Now, getting back to specifically Guardians 3, that was not the High Evolutionary. They completely ruined them. And just me personally, that dumbed down in name only character and that silly, over the top, nonsensical film, it hurt my head on every possible way. I hated that movie. I hated it. It's garbage. It's trash.
Well, I'm going to end on this. I know we're doing like a short word because we started late. And I got. If I wasn't working, I'd stay up all night long.
Oh, be careful going to.
Yeah, but Eric Guapo, get ready for the No King National Protest tomorrow. Be safe. Yeah, and I have to go into Manhattan. I'm so mad because they had three different crews working tomorrow overtime, and they canceled all of them except for mine. I was like, I mean, I could use the money. Who can't? But Trump, could you get the no overtime tax thing passed before I go to work tomorrow?
Well, that's in the big beautiful bill, so that won't be done until August or September, probably.
So I got to go into
the Senate.
So everybody, watch YouTube tomorrow. When you see crazy construction worker gets arrested for violence, that's probably me.
Be careful, John. Be careful. Watch your back.
Yeah.
Bring your hammer, John.
have a
Hammer
question.
4.
It won't happen to the afternoon because let's be realistic. These protesters aren't waking up until at least 11 o'clock. You know, so
Well, they have
I
to
have a
they have to
question.
cash their checks because they're all paid.
Yeah.
None of it's
What's
real.
your question, Logic?
I have a question. So, to the panel, to you, Tony, to you, John, and to you, Marcus. Sydney Sweeney as Power Girl, can she stop the High Evolutionary and Mr. Sinister in their tracks?
Only if she takes off her bra.
I'm all in,
Yeah, she has
baby.
to
I'm
prove she has
all
real
in.
boobs first.
Yeah, I like it.
Sydney Sweeney as Power Girl wins everything.
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 In every possible universe, time, space, or dimension. How's that for an
You
answer?
got it.
All right.
I
So
love it.
All
Love
right.
it.
this week, remember Sunday, I'm going to do X-Men 94 for
Good.
Sunday
Sunday
Comics.
Comics.
And then next, I got people planned for next week. What do I got for next week? I only have one schedule for next week, so I'll try to get more people for next week. But I got to go to bed. I'm starting to step over my words. Good night, everybody.
Bye, John. Thanks for having me. Bye, Logic. Bye, Mark.
Nice seeing you, Tony. Nice talking to
Thanks
you.
for putting up with the time changes. You know.
Oh, all right. Stay safe, John.
Bye bye.